all for coming. I'll start by introducing myself and Paths Through Change. For those of you who don't know, I'm Eily Livingstone and I am the founder of Paths Through Change. And so before I was the founder, I did a number of things professionally. I was a teacher for many years in music and also as a teacher of English as a foreign language, all the way from young 3-year-olds up to adults in that. I was a family solicitor in a variety of firms, city firm, local legal aid, across a variety of areas. I'm from a huge family, ever increasing, and as will become relevant later, my parents divorced when I was 13, and I am also now a parent. So that's me. And now Paths Through Change, as you can see there, it was established last year, a COVID baby business. And our mission is to help children to navigate their parent separation. We are there with the sole aim of advocating for the child at that time of their lives and making sure that they feel seen, well respected and cared for. And we do this in a variety of ways, and mainly one-to-one with families, so me coming in and walking alongside and working with families. But we also do it by sharing information more widely with parents and professionals who work with families, and by putting on events for children whose parents are separating so they can connect with one another. So here's a bit more about what we're doing tonight. I'll kick off in a moment with my talk, which is going to be called 5 Things That All Parents Can Learn from Parents Who Live Apart. And then when we've done that, I will introduce you to the new branding, new website, and all the lovely, colourful things. And then we'll be done by 5:30, so you can get back to your evenings. So let's kick off with the talk, 5 things that all parents can learn from parents who live apart. And these are things that I've picked up from working with families and children for 10, 15 years, and seeing how families of all shapes and sizes sort of negotiate these issues, and what we can learn from those family structures where the parents are living apart, either all the way through their child's life, or there's a transition at some stage from the parents living together to living apart. So the first one is how to cope when your child prefers their other parent. That one's a bit of a, for most parents, they've either experienced or seen it. Number 2 is how to enjoy time away from your children. Some parents will say that's the easiest thing in the world, but there are some hints to make sure that you do enjoy it. And number 3 is how to support children spending nights away from a breast or chest feeding parent. And again, this kind of comes up in a lot of the families where the child is fed in this way, but there are really helpful tips that we can take that we see from parents who live apart and how they navigate it. Number 4 is how to disagree with your child or children's other parent while remaining united. That's a $1 million question. If I had easy answers, then the world would be a more harmonious place, but I will try and give some tips. And lastly, how to be honest with your child or children about difficult things. And I'm going through that at the moment with a 3-year-old, everything's why. So yeah, I will share some things that I've learned from watching families go before me. So firstly, how to cope when your child prefers their other parent. As I said, children go through different stages at different ages, and there's often some parent that they particularly feel drawn to, or something that they make an issue of. And the reason why it's useful to look towards parents who live apart as to how to navigate this is because there's bigger repercussions for those families when there is a parental preference going on. It's not just a matter of, oh, I want, mummy to do my bath time. It can become, oh, well, I don't want to go to mummy's for the weekend, and the whole thing's thrown off. And the other reason why we can learn from looking at those families is because there's often an arrangement where one parent is doing more of the day-to-day routine and the homework and the bedtimes, and there might be another parent who's doing the sort of more fun things at weekends and holidays, and that can obviously lead to a dynamic where a child is drawn towards one more. And I've written there as well that there's the additional element of struggling with the transition between going from one home to the other. So really it's something that families where the parents are living apart, they really have to get stuck in with this issue. So the second point is what we learn from looking at families where the parents are living apart. The most important thing we see is that both parents must communicate to the child that they fully support their relationship with their other parent. And that might feel quite hard if you're the parent that's being rejected and you have to say, oh, it's great that you want to go to daddy, isn't he so fun? And yeah, really, let's go. You want to stay there even longer? Fabulous. It might feel quite hard when you're the parent that's being rejected. I'm going to go a little bit, it's quite a big subject, but to understand why a child often sort of does this picking sides and forming allegiances, it's quite useful to think about their little survival brains, their mechanisms, where they're really thinking, okay, where's my food coming from? Where's my shelter coming from? Now, I'm with this parent right now. Now, is that child going to do anything that disrupts that or threatens it? And obviously, as a parent, you're not going to not give your child supper because they said they want to go to their other parent. But children don't really know that. And so that's why you can start seeing them telling one parent one thing and another parent the other thing. So in terms of looking at those families where the parents are living apart and applying it to all families of shapes and sizes, one of the things that I always go to first is, let's have a look and see whether the practical arrangements can be tweaked. Practical arrangements can be changed in so many ways: day of the week, what time, who's picking up from nursery, who's doing bedtime, that kind of thing. And so those things are fairly easy to tweak. So it's worth trying them and seeing whether they resolve the issue, whether the child stops sort of being reluctant to go from one parent to the other, or whether the parental preference remains. And if it does, then it means that there's probably something emotional going on and we need to dig a little deeper. So my tip for this number one, how to cope when your child prefers their other parent, is to be sympathetic to the other parent's position. It's not working for anyone when these dynamics are setting up. No one wants to be rejected by their child, but equally, no one wants to be the parent who's overwhelmed and always needed by their child and has to be the child be peeled off. And so, yeah, if you try and put yourself in the other parent's shoes, remember it might actually be you next. Children tend to switch. So number two, how to enjoy time away from your children. Now, this is often a funny one because some parents say, how could you not enjoy time away from your children? But we do see guilt coming up when parents do. And the reason why it's important to look to families where the parents are living apart for this is because it's something that's built into their routine normally. They have time with the child and time without it. And actually the lesson that we can learn from parents like that are that really the amount of rest and relaxation and time away, if you can really enjoy that time away from your child, then you're going to be a better parent when the child's with you. So I've asked the parents I work with, how do you make sure you really enjoy it? And everyone's different. Some plan loads of activities and keep themselves super busy. Some really knuckle down into work. A common one is doing things that you can't do with your child around. And for parents who live apart, that's often seeing your new partner but it might be seeing friends or just doing something you're never going to do when your child's around. So my tip for how to enjoy time away from your children is to work out what type of parent you are. Are you going to relax most knowing nothing about what your child's up to and just delegating, or by psychically following along and seeing, knowing how they're getting on and with a bit of information dripped back? If you know what kind of parent that you are, then you can ask the person that they're with to facilitate that for you. And then you can really relax and be a great parent when the children are with you. Number 3 is how to support children spending nights away from a breast or chest feeding parent. Now, again, this is an issue that is going to come up probably at some stage if you have a child who's fed in this way at all, whether the parents are living together or apart. The reason why it's super useful to look to the families where the parents are living apart for recommendations is that it has a big practical implication. If they're not doing overnights with their parent who doesn't breast or chest feed them, then that other parent's time with them is really restricted. So what I like to remind parents in this situation is that it's incredibly likely that you're both going to have the same goal. You're both going to ideally want your child to feel comfortable overnight with either parent. The reason why you're not is because as parents, you're bringing to this situation your different worries and different beliefs about child being upset or what a child needs or what sleeping routines are ideal. And also this is a situation where there's not going to be any definitive research on it. If you want to find it, you'll find research that supports your opinion. So it's something that really we've got to knuckle down and get into the practical matter of. So here I've said, there are so many practical ways that you can work on making the child and the parents feel comfortable, both before an overnight stay takes place and during it. I haven't got time to go into all of them now, but they're things like where it takes place, how the bedtime routine's done, and whether there's a sort of escape valve, ripcord at any point if needed. But most of those tips are in an audio blog on this subject. So my tip for how to support children spending nights away from a breast or chest feeding parent is to work out whether your child is the type of child who wants to have as similar a routine as possible between both parents as possible, or whether they're the kind of child where really they want 2 completely different routines depending on the parent they're with. And children are really different in this, and it's again something practically that you can make really easy tweaks, different sleep aids, noises, teddies, bedding, stories. But once you know what your child prefers and is more comfortable with, then you'll know sort of how to go about it. So number 4, how to disagree with your child's other parent while remaining united. Now, the important bit is the last bit, remaining united. It goes without saying that you're going to disagree. The fact is that you can't possibly agree everything automatically with your child's other parent. And so looking at families where the parents live apart is really helpful to give us clues to bring into whatever type of family we have. In fact, parents who aren't in a romantic relationship with each other often find it easier to separate out their expectations of their child's other parent. If they are only your child's other parent and not also your partner, then you can sort of see how your expectations may conflict. You're almost certainly going to want something different in terms of a parent to your child than you are as a romantic partner. And it's useful to see how these work in families where the parents are living apart. You see that they sort of have just one person who is their child's other parent, and they'll look to other relationships to provide them with what another partner might do. And you can do that even if you are in a romantic relationship by turning to your friendships and wider circle for support at moments where you as parents aren't on the same page. And finally, a bit of advice that we hear all the time, but the sort of understanding behind it is that if you make time to be just partners with one another rather than parents, then that's a time where you can exclusively just be fulfilling each other's expectations as a partner, almost as if you were different people, as we see with parents who live apart who have separate partners themselves. So my tip for this one is being aware of how your child and their other parent feel supported. Some people call it love languages. There's lots of different ways of understanding it. But if you can understand how your child and the other parent are going to feel most supported by you, whether it's by you doing acts of service for them or whether it's by quality time or whatever, then you can actually find you might be able to knit those expectations together. For example, my partner's love language is definitely acts of service and my child's is quality time. So I can do those two together and be a good partner and parent by doing a particularly boring bedtime and hopefully combine those two expectations. So finally, how to be honest with your child or children about difficult things. All parents, as I've said there, want to shield their children from things they perceive as bad. And it's really tempting to want to put a smile on our faces and say to our children that everything's okay. And obviously that's a really important thing to do. But it's useful to look at families where there has been a transition from one family structure to the other, because it's such an obvious change that they can't just put a smiling face on it and say, oh, everything's all right, darling, everything's fine. And actually that's where we see the real benefits, is because when these negative things are out in the open, then we can see that children feel like their experience of what's going on around them is validated and that their instincts were right, that something actually was up. And so looking to those families and the way that they negotiate those difficult conversations can be really inspiring for all of us. And my tip for this final thing is a little bit of a low note to end on, but it chimes in with the business's real objective, which is that it can be tempting when you're feeling guilty about having to deliver some bad news to your child to appease your own guilt by underestimating how much of an impact it's going to have on your child and minimizing it and playing it down. And one of the big tenets of what Paths Through Change is doing is saying, let's throw a light on it. Let's make sure that as a society, we're not underestimating what it is for a child. We're not allowing our guilt as parents to obscure. And it's really important that we validate for a child what this experience is for them. So thank you. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, just to give you an idea of what I learned working with the families that I've worked with. Now, second part of this evening, I am so excited to be able to introduce you to my new website and logo and YouTube channel. So here we can see the gorgeous new logo, which we have for Paths Through Change, which has been lovingly put together by Kirsty McQueen and lovingly drawn by Colin McQueen. They're actually not siblings, but they are both related to me. And we have these images. We've worked really closely together to make sure that what the business does is represented in the logo. So we've got footprints here as we go on the journey. We've got holding hands at either a parent and a child or Paths Through Change with you and walking alongside you. And then we've got a Rubik's Cube there for the problem-solving aspect of the business. So I really hope you like the logo. It's going to be everywhere now. And now this is the new website, which again looks a lot like Kirsty McQueen's stamp on it. And that's because her wonderful brain has conjured up what it should look like. And we've had Chris Strickland, who did all the technology and make sure that Kirsty's ideas could be put into practice. I've just got the first welcome page here But you can see that you've got the things at the top, which tells you a lot more about what the business does and how we do it. We've got packages there, it's all fixed prices, and the things to explore is a really good place to send people to, because there's a lot of free resources there. There's lots of books which have families of all shapes and sizes, websites for co-parents to help with their communication. There's our events and our courses under there. And yeah, you can see here this lovely image that Kirsty's put together, which shows how the combination of all these things helps these children flourish and thrive during and after their parents' separation. So we have I talked about the audio blog earlier about how and when to do overnight stays, and all the practical tips are in there. You can see it's 20 minutes long. There are quite a lot. But we've also got these longer ones, introducing new partners, telling your child you're separating. Those are audio only because I think we've all had enough of screens. But this is on YouTube, so really easy to access. And these shorter videos are a bit more about me. So finally, I want to tell you about my exclusive launch offer to celebrate all this new launch of branding and the website and everything. For the month of July, for every introduction to a potential client, I will, Pass-Through Change is going to pay for a tree to be planted in the NHS forest. And that's a little incentive there for people to make connections and referrals, and obviously super important for the children and the future. But this offer is not time limited. I always offer a free introductory call for both parents, for every family, either together or apart, to explain a bit more about what we do. So finally, I'll just say a few thank yous. Thank you all for being here. I've been working away in this little room by myself and sort of talking to a few people. But tonight is a really exciting opportunity to shout about it. I'm super proud of what this organisation is going to do, how we can help families, and now, thanks to all this gorgeous branding, what it looks like. So particular thanks to Colin for his gorgeous pictures, and to Kirsty for all her branding expertise, Chris for his amazing WordPress expertise and knowledge, Helder, he put together my first website, which has done a sterling job for the past year. And finally, of course, I don't know if they managed to stay on the call, but to Tom and Rue, who decided that this was a great idea for me to do, to jack in the day job and dedicate my time to this. So thank you to them.